as Betsy said, tonight will be completely live. And for the first time during the series, we have a full live panel. We have the presenters here with us, meaning that we can talk with them, we can ask them questions. You definitely want to utilize the chat box on tonight to make sure that you're getting all of your answers, all of your questions answered. Before I get into tonight, I just want to give everyone a reminder. This series runs or has been running from August 3rd to August 6th. Okay, so that's Monday through Thursday. And then it will run next week from August 10th to August 12th. And we want to make sure that you guys are here every single night. If you can't be here and you miss some nights, that's okay. Every single night, we are recording our sessions on Zoom, and we will have the recorded material for your viewing pleasure at a later date, probably within the next week or so. So don't worry if you're missing something, if the presenters are talking too fast, do not worry. We will make sure that you get all of this content. Thank you guys again for joining us. Before we start, I definitely want to give some introductions. So these three folks have been acting as our moderators for the past 2 nights, but tonight they are our live panelists. And not only that, they are public allies. So what is a public ally? I'm so glad that you asked, because I wrote it down and I'm going to read it to you. So Public Allies is a national movement committed to advancing social justice and equity by engaging and activating the leadership capacities of young people. Allies are placed with a nonprofit organization where they help address critical community needs such as youth development, education, workforce development, environmental issues, arts programming, and community health. These allies, along with myself, we have dedicated 10 months of our lives to be partnered with nonprofit organizations. So while yes, you have known me for the past 2 days as the program coordinator of the Well, I am a public ally first, and I was partnered with the Well second. And it has been an amazing journey. But this is not about me tonight. Tonight, I definitely want us to get our introductions done, and then we will start this panel. So for introductions, I want you guys to tell me your name, where you're from, the name of your partner organization, and your title there. And then I want you to tell us your favorite band, music group, singer, rapper when you were a teen. So I will start us off first. My name is Regine Murchison. I know you guys are tired of hearing that. I am from Baltimore, Maryland. And the name of my partner organization is The Well, the Wade Edwards Foundation and Learning Lab. And my favorite band or music group was literally all things Beyonce. So Destiny's Child, the first, and then the second generation of Destiny's Child, and now Beyonce just on her own. So that's me. Kristin, you can go first.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristin Dungee. I'm from West Palm Beach, Florida, and I'm currently serving with the North Carolina Institute for Economic Development as a digital media specialist. So when I was a teen, I was into so many different types of music, but I was a huge Gwen Stefani fan. So I love No Doubt and Gwen Stefani, if any of you here even know who that is.
Khaliid, can you go next?
Sure. My name's Khaliid Scott. I'm originally from the Hudson Valley area of upstate New York. And I'm with My Brothers Keeper Wake County as an outreach and engagement manager. And a couple years ago when I was a teenager, my favorite artist was Drake. I've been a huge fan of Drake ever since he was with Young Money, transferring over to OVO, creating his own label. So yeah, been a huge fan of his, the whole Young Money roster for a really long time.
And Jacob.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Jacob. I am a community engagement coordinator over at Alliance of Disability Advocates. And I don't think anyone's going to know who I listen to. But my favorite band as a teen was Brand New. Had some really good records.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you so much. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to start off really strong. Habit number 3, put first things first. I mean, it's in the name, but I want to ask you guys a question first. What is your relationship with time management and putting first things first? Kristin, can you start us off? Oh, you're on mute.
For me, it's really important that I do have a planner. So I use it daily, and it's something that I've just incorporated into my life. And I've also ventured out, and I now have a bigger whiteboard that I use. And I really like using my whiteboard because it saves paper. So it's really eco-friendly, and I can just kind of erase what I need, and it's really big so I can see it visually. And so what I do is my whiteboard is just for that day, right? So I can just look, this is what I need to do today. My priorities are right there on the whiteboard.
Khaliid?
For me, my relationship with putting things first has not always been great. Going to be a little honest up front. I mean, as I got older and kind of developed the skills of prioritizing things that I felt were most important during my week, I would say it's one of the things that I've kind of strengthened over the years. Right now, I'm currently a master's student at North Carolina Central University. So definitely staying on top of my work is something that I've had to learn throughout high school and undergrad.
Jacob?
Yeah, I think I'll just like echo what's already been said. It was really just keeping like a planner or just something to track myself down and just, I mean, like even when I'm not, planning for anything or having like a specific goal, like just even just like time management, like anything is just, like I want to like, dedicate, like an hour to, like writing something, or like I'm dedicating an hour to reading, just enough to where like I don't get, too bogged down into one particular thing. Like I like to keep things moving. And I do like a lot of different tasks. So just being able to just like say like I'm dedicating like this amount of time to something, and then being able to focus on to something else has just like always kind of like helped me out a lot. And then just writing everything down just so that I know like what already took place, and then I can just move on from there.
So in the 7 Habits book, Sean Covey says that we spend our time in 4 different time quadrants. And each quadrant contains different kinds of activities and is represented by a type of person. So Kristin, can you kind of explain to us what these 4 quadrants are?
Sure, I'll give us a brief rundown. The book does a really great job of explaining this. So if you haven't read this part of the book already, I do encourage you to read it thoroughly. So let's start with quadrant 1. So as you can see on the left side, we have important, and on the top, we have urgent. So these are the crisis emergencies that arise in our life. This person is called the procrastinator. So if you live in this box, you might be called a procrastinator. So urgent and important things, a lot of times they're unforeseen or unplanned for. So that would be, again, an emergencies or an urgent deadline that just pops up at the last minute that is time sensitive, and that requires your immediate attention. And so some issues with living in this quadrant is it can lead to stress and burnout because you're constantly on edge. You're constantly in that fight or flight mode, and you're constantly putting out fires of your own creation most of the time. So that's the procrastinator, quadrant 1. Let's move downward to quadrant 3. So we'll save quadrant 2 for last. So quadrant 3, you see it says not important and urgent. So this is called, in the book, it's called the yes man, but I would like to change that to be more gender neutral. We'll call that the people pleaser, okay? So if you live in this quadrant, you're not a bad person, but you just tend to agree to things, maybe without consulting your planner or really seeing what you have going on. So they're high urgency, but they're not all important. A lot of times they're other people's important things that you take on. The key here is just to eliminate as much as possible things in quadrant 3 by delegating those tasks out to somebody else, or just politely saying no. So that's where you'll have to really think about how you can instill boundaries in your life and tell someone no. It might be uncomfortable because you might not want to let them down, but it's really important for you to think about what is most important for you and your priorities, because your priorities a lot of times aren't others. So just keep that in mind. So just to rephrase, quadrant 3 are just unimportant interruptions that a lot of times come from outside yourself. The next quadrant would be quadrant 4. And as you see, it says not urgent and not important. These are known as time wasters. And we do a lot of this. I know you guys can comment in the chat, but like, do you ever find yourself working, especially since a lot of us are working remotely, and at the same time you have 12 tabs open? I know I do. I do that all the time. I have so many tabs open, and then I go, why do I have all these tabs open on my computer? I need to shut them all down and just focus on like 1 or 2, right? So sometimes we do those other things and it just sucks up our time. Another time waster is TikTok. I mean, we were all on it because it was like, you know, a stress reliever. It was fun, but it's so consuming. They designed that platform to waste your time. That's the whole point of it, which is fun when it has its place, but it's not always the best thing if you have a paper coming up, checking Facebook, obsessing over it. Those things can suck our time. It's not a bad thing to live in this quadrant. Let me rephrase. It's not great to live here, but it's okay to visit here, right? So it's a good time to come to quadrant 4 if you need a mental break. And we call this quadrant the slacker because you don't want to stay here. It's not in your best interest if you want to be a highly effective person. If you don't, then you can stay as a slacker, but I don't think anybody here wants to do that. All right, so let's go to quadrant 2, and I saved the best for last. Why? Because most highly effective people live right here, okay? So it's not urgent and important. And as you see, this quadrant says prevention, planning, improvement. So this is where a lot of our activities lie that will help us better ourselves, okay? So these are the places of the things that we should do, right? So strategic planning, building relationships, exercise, preparing for an event or something that's coming up in the future, education, personal development activities. These are these long-term goals. And a lot of times what happens is we put them off, right? And then we find ourselves in quadrant 1 because we've procrastinated, we waited to the last minute, and now we have an exam, and now we have to cram for it. You know, so if we can be proactive about planning and keeping the activities in quadrant 2 in check or managed, we won't be stressed out and have to move into that procrastinator box. So I just want to leave you all with 2 things. One's a quote from Covey, the author. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. I'll read that again. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So that's something you can just think about moving forward is what are my priorities and then how can I accomplish them as opposed to writing a to-do list of all the things you have to do in a day or a week. Here's a life hack for you all. If you spend more time on quadrant 2 activities now, when they're not urgent, you will minimize the number of quadrant 1 activities in the future. And that's what I just said. So if you really focus your time on quadrant 2, there's less chance for you to be burnt out and stressed out because you waited to the last minute.
Thank you so much for that, Kristin. Explained perfectly, just like what Sean said, and even some added portions. In the chat here, we had a couple people say, oh, I'm a people pleaser, I just can't say no. I have social media up while I'm working, etc., etc. Well, Sean Covey is not gonna leave you hanging. He then proceeds to tell us about our planning and how we have to be proactive in planning. He goes into great detail about weekly planning, actually. Khaliid, can you tell us some of those steps?
Sure. So in order to prioritize your week, I highly encourage you to either get a planner or a calendar. And this is something that doesn't have to be a book that you carry around with you. It can be a computer, it could be on your phone, or even a piece of paper, as Kristin described earlier. You can even have a whiteboard that you use weekly to write out your goals. And then something that I like to do, if you're like me, I use my smartphone for everything, going off during the day, probably 15 to 20 reminders just to keep me on task throughout the week. And then I want to give you 3 steps that you can use during your week to be intentional. So the first one is to identify your big rocks. And so what that would look like, you're going to sit down either Monday morning or Sunday night and really identify the key things that you need to do throughout the week. So this for me would be studying for an exam, finishing a paper. And then step 2 would be to block out time for your big rocks. So an analogy that I would like to use is, say you have a bin and you have a bunch of big rocks. What you would do, you're going to fill up the bin with all of the big rocks first. And then at the end of the week, or at the end of you planning out your week, you're going to put all the little tiny rocks into it. And that will lead you to step 3. Like I said, schedule everything else around your big rocks. What this is, once you have your big rocks booked, scheduling all the little to-do things like your daily tasks and appointments. For me, I like to spend a lot of time with my family and reading books. So after I get all my studying out of the way for the week for school, I like to include that into my daily activities.
Thank you, Khaliid. I would like to offer a question to both Kristin and Jacob about weekly planning. Do any one of you weekly plan? If so, how do you go about it? I know you guys kind of said that in the beginning, but maybe just reiterating a little bit now that we've talked about the quadrants and stuff.
I usually use a week. Well, I don't really have a weekly planner. I have one on my phone though, and I usually use that at least once a week, maybe, to fill out what I have to do. So for the schedule, I usually fill out all of the stuff that I have to do or that needs to be done first, usually in the mornings during the day. That way, the time in the afternoon and at night is my time because everything else is already done. Then I don't have to worry about the stuff that needs to be urgent because it's already done. So then I won't be worrying about it all the time because it's already done. All I have to do is just hand it in or whatever has to be done to get it in. Everything else is my time because it's already complete. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Joey, that is great. Why didn't we let Joey be a presenter? Where have you been? Yes, exactly. That is wonderful. And in order to, I also weekly plan. I absolutely have to, especially these days with school about to start up and our programming about to start up again. But it takes incredible discipline to keep it all going and to make sure that I am putting the first things first and that I am prioritizing. Jacob, can you tell us about the comfort zone and the courage zone?
Yeah, definitely. And so like I was really glad to kind of like go through this chapter. Like this is something that I think really like resonates like with me, and I think like with a lot of people, like especially like when I was a teenager. So, like just like thinking about like what these things are. It's just like like when I think of like my comfort zone, it's just like I remember like having to like call people, and I like didn't really like to talk all that much. I didn't really like to talk to people I didn't know. I didn't really like to do that. That wasn't like comfortable for me, and so I kind of had to figure out a way to kind of like get out of that, like because like I mean, like if I went through my life like that entire time and I kind of like stuck in that kind of like zone of like I'm not super comfortable of going out and talking to people that I didn't know, then I wouldn't do anything. Like how can you do that? Like so it's kind of so like when I read this, like it kind of showed me that like that's kind of like the similar like ways that I've been kind of thinking, is that like our comfort zone will kind of like represent all these things that we've been like familiar with, like like the friends that we've had for so long, like activities that we do all the time, like there's all these things that makes us feel safe and secure. But, you know, and then then you have to look on the other side of everything, and you have to see that, like, you know, like making new friends and you know, speaking, like, you know, doing like a public speaking event, you know, something like this, or you know, like sticking up to your values, like, is something that can be really like anxiety inducing. But everything that makes us feel challenged is kind of like necessary for us to grow as people. And so in this territory, like, this is where, like, we kind of like called it like the courage zone. Like, everything kind of you know, will make us feel challenged, and it's where like we're uncertainty, like a lot of pressure, and like a possibility that things might not end up the way that you want them to. Like, all that kind of stuff is there. Um, but at the same time, like, and I think like this is the main point I've been kind of like trying to drive home, is that even though like all those things that make us uncomfortable is there, it's all like, what's also there is a place for growth, for opportunity, and to do things that you couldn't imagine that you thought that you'd be able to do. You know, you never reach it by hanging out like in your same comfort zone. So there's like a really great quote that's in the book, and it's by like an Olympic gymnast, and it's the hard days are the best because that's where champions are made. So if you can push through, you can push through anything. And so like that's really great. Like, that's something that I've always, like, you know, kind of resonated with. Like, I've always, like, you know, felt challenged a lot, like when I was in school, or like when I started, like, you know, working full time, I always felt challenged. And I always just, like, you know, just kind of like, you know, work through that and kind of push through it, and then just set realistic goals and good expectations. And then like that kind of got me out of the comfort zone. So, or out of my comfort zone, like, for the most part. I still think I'd like to live in there sometimes, but I always, like, you know, like so push through and kind of go through, and, you know, work on things that are in my courage zone. So, you know, this could be something like, you know, like making a new friend, breaking an old habit, you know, like trying out for a new team that you've always like wanted to do, you know, like auditioning for something, you know, just like getting involved like in your community, and really, like, probably like for a lot of people, like being like just being yourself can be, you know, part of that courage zone. Like, there's like a lot of things that where, you know, like, it's more comfortable to do things that, you know, are, you know, with the norm and like in the same grain, but, you know, then you kind of end up neglecting like yourself, like kind of like what you need. And so it's important to kind of like recognize that, you know, being yourself is, you know, part of being in that courage zone. So that's kind of like the main things that I got out of everything. Like things are like, you know, kind of like you know, like risky, but I always like to think of like this one quote, that like nothing worth having comes easy. And so that's just something that really like resonates with me a lot. So there's no reason to be afraid to try anything that you know you've wanted to try out.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you so much. So when it comes to the comfort zone and the courage zone, is there anyone that related to that or relates to that now? I know I have, there's, Joey said something in the chat. Joey, would you like to say that out loud? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm pretty good at having courage whenever I want to try something new, or whenever I'm being forced to try something new. I'm especially really good at bravery, because even though taking risks might hurt me or somebody else, I'm pretty good at having enough courage to do it, because I think that even if you're worried, or even if you're afraid to try something new, you should still try to do it anyway. At least try to do it, because if you don't like it, or because if you didn't like it before, but you at least tried to do it now, then that takes bravery. And I think to do that, and I think if you are worried, you should think about something that you actually enjoy doing or something like that, because it will kind of help you push through to get to the end of the line. So yeah, I think that's that's kind of good to think about something that you enjoy doing, because it will help you push through, and you should be brave enough to try new things. You shouldn't be afraid of it, because if you're afraid of it, then you're only holding yourself back from wanting to do it. So you should have courage to be able to try that something new before you say, nah, I don't want to do it anymore.
Thank you, Joey. Really good advice. There was someone else who wanted to share something about the Comfort and Courage Zone or something in general.
Yeah.
Hi.
So I was just thinking about, like, this year I'm trying something new. I'm coding an app with a bunch of my teammates.
Ooh.
And so I was a little scared at first because I'd done stuff like that on my own, but I had no idea how it would work doing it as a team. But it was people I knew, so I just talked to them beforehand and told them that I was a little bit of scared, but they were like, it's okay, we can do it together.
Yes, it's so much better when you do it together. I can also share that I have never hosted a virtual series before. But what I did is I just have a lot of support. Betsy McFarland, who is the executive director of the Well, she's here, and just having her here is support. And I have my public allies who are also here with me for support. And when it feels like we're all doing it together, and I don't feel alone, and I don't feel as scared as I did before. So I took the risk, and now here we are, and here you guys are listening to my voice. Thank you guys so much for sharing. To close us up for the night, I just have questions just for Kristin and Khaliid. What are your parting thoughts for teams who struggle with time management?
So I'll go first. The one thing that I would say, if you're struggling with time management, is really sit down and think about what's important to do during the week and prioritize that. Like I said, it's really important that you have a planner. That way you can stay on task as you move throughout the week, and you won't forget things like homework or important appointments that you have scheduled.
I would say just keep things simple. Sometimes in life, we just tend to pack on things that might seem glamorous or cool or fun or exciting, but at the end of the day, it's not really going in the direction of where you want to go. So just get clear with yourself and what you want to do and simplify your life. So become a little bit of a minimalist. Get rid of the stuff that isn't really going to help you in the long run.
Thank you, panelists. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight for habit number 3, put first things first. Remember to join us tomorrow for habit number 4, think win-win, where Victoria and Sarah Vojnovich are going to be here, and they are going to be ready to answer any questions you have about habit number 4. Thank you guys again for joining us. Have a good night. Bye.
Right.